Hey friends, I I had a really interesting day today. Interesting day, kind of a bunch of couple experiences that were sort of eye-opening, and also a sense of I had a lesson with Madeline today, my first one in probably 3 weeks, I think, or even more, 3 or 4 weeks. And I just had such a great time going back into that world, revisiting the piano in that way. And something that kind of, it stood out to me, I think, because it's been a while since I was there because of the work I've been doing here and on the show. And also I had just had COVID. I'm very much over it now, but I'm still coming out of that, what feels a bit like a cocoon. I've only been off quarantine for a couple days where I've actually been able to go outside and go to stores and whatnot. And I'm still fully masked and everything, but I'm coming out. I feel like I'm coming out of a cocoon, and I had this sense of being rested. I spoke yesterday about having a sense of time and really letting myself lean into what do I do with that time. And so showing up today and coming back to the piano in a really deep way was kind of the perfect thing to do, and it also was really challenging. I found it challenging because it was like I recall, and this has happened to me before, when I come out of a phase of not having practiced for a while, or not having played this kind of music for a while, classical music, really, where there's a real sort of deep awareness of the musicianship and the nuance, and the technique is demanding enough that you really have to be there. I come back to it, and I just have this sense of having to go so slowly. And then what happens is what starts to activate. It's like there's a first layer where I'm just very consciously embracing, letting myself explore and feel and discover. I'm really kind of in discovery mode. I'm letting myself discover the piece, letting myself discover the geometry of the keys, how my hands have to move to navigate passages and whatnot. And then relatively quickly, habits want to come back. And it's like those habits are the things, they're both the tools that allowed me to perform the piece last time, or to sort of get the piece up to the level that I've had it at in the past. They are that. They're the encapsulation of that. And they're also the limitation on how far I was able to take that piece. So they're both. It's kind of like the habit comes back that wants to take me back to the way that I did it when I was doing it the best I've ever done it last time. But what those habits are sort of precluding, or sort of getting in the way of, is the current discovery of a different way of doing things that might take me way beyond what I was able to do last time. And so the experience of coming back to a piece after a long time, or especially coming back to the playing of piano itself after a long time, is often one of trying to keep that door open, that door to new possibility. Keep it open, not start letting that habitual behavior, those patterns of how I used to do it, take over. Excuse me. Because as soon as I go there, yeah, it may improve what I'm doing right now. It may initially appear to be improvement over my sort of like slow and very nascent kind of nebulous state. But there's an inherent limitation there. And I noticed this in the piece I was playing today in a couple of different ways. Madeline just kept bringing me back to the absolute basic fundamental things. And psychologically I experience the frustration of that. It's like, but I want to go faster. And, but me having kind of taken a mindfulness approach for long enough, and also having taught enough students now, I'm able to recognize that pretty quickly. And I'm like, oh, I'm just doing that thing of going faster than I actually can, right? I'm going faster than my ears can travel. In other words, I can't hear exactly what's happening. Of course I can hear it. It's going into my eardrums are getting vibrated by the sound, but I'm not really tracking what's happening. And it's actually possible to track every little nuance of what's happening on the keyboard with our ears. That's one of the kind of miraculous things I'm learning from Madeline, is that that's totally possible. And when our ears start to really hear those details, those discriminations, what is this pitch? What happens when this pitch transfers to this pitch? Just on the most kind of like basic level, emotionally arriving on the next pitch, what that feels like. There's a feeling there that we can actually experience if we are not just blowing over the surface of it. And and that's where I found myself today, is kind of sitting right there on that edge. And I didn't let myself practice for too long. I think actually what might be really good for me is to not practice for very long, because it's exhausting to practice like this. It takes so much patience. And so I think if I practiced for too long, I would run out of patience and energy to stay so focused. And I would just start going back to habitual practice, which is what I already felt the impulse towards. That impulse was already coming up today. So I'm on the lookout for that now. I'm definitely on the lookout for that switch happening internally. From I'm open, I'm present, I'm here, I'm really available for whatever tiny little, sometimes it's a technical thing. It's just a matter of like, I know that there's a certain discomfort or a certain like lack of fluency in my wrist when I play scales. I know this. But will I actually sit with it and really just sit there and perceive that, so that I can then potentially take the next step, potentially learn what that connection is that I'm not feeling yet. As opposed to, I know how to play scale pretty good. I can play pretty fast. I've been pretty, I know what I'm doing, and then just do it and go back into habit, and then kind of like baking in all those inefficiencies again to where I won't perceive them. That's the thing about a fresh breath like this, is I start to perceive all the little inefficiencies, all the little stumbling blocks, speed bumps, all the little things that trip me up. I actually have the capacity to perceive them. And what's more exhausting than constantly perceiving your limitations, right? What's more exhausting than that? Nothing. It's endless. You just sit there and you want to get past it, because all we're seeing is, this limitation, that limitation, this inefficiency, this little hiccup, this little tweak. Oh, this doesn't feel comfortable. The ability to sit with that and really, really sit with that is huge, because there's no other way to get through it. It's not going to magically, we're not going to just go back to doing it habitually in an inefficient manner and then magically over time it'll get better and better. I mean, that works when you have like a 6-year-old and you have till they're 18 to teach them piano. Then it works okay. Still doesn't work very well. But you can just throw years and years and years of experience at the problem, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm too old for that. I don't have that kind of time. I need to actually listen to what I'm doing, actually feel what I'm doing, really get inside it. And I just had a bit of a revisitation of that today, because anytime that I have time off and I get to take a fresh swing, I have that sense of like, oh yeah, this is stuff that wasn't working before. It feels awkward now, but that feeling awkward is actually a step forward, because now I'm feeling that it's awkward. Whereas last time it felt awkward, I just didn't feel it. I didn't actually perceive it. I guess this is kind of in defense of time off, in defense of some good night's sleep. But yeah, it was definitely it's great to see Madeline again, and it feels good to reconnect with the instrument in this way. So happy to be back. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate you. Also got my hair cut, as you can probably see. Big day. I appreciate you. I love this conversation. You mean the world to me. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.